Please welcome the 14th Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden.
Well, welcome. Welcome and good evening. Welcome to the opening celebration of the 2024 National Book Festival, the Library of Congress National Book Festival. And greetings to those of you who are watching us online and on C-SPAN. The theme of this year's festival is Books Build Us Up. And this theme is reflected in the distinguished author lineup, which reflects the diversity of voices throughout the nation and illustrates how reading can connect people and inform lives. This is the National Book Festival's 24th year, and it remains one of the preeminent literary events in the United States. As the largest library in the world, the Library of Congress has a special opportunity to champion reading and literacy. And this weekend, we welcome an acclaimed, diverse group of authors to our nation's capital to celebrate the importance of books in our lives. So we're excited to be with many of you tomorrow and the tens of thousands of book lovers who will join us in person and those who will participate virtually. Now, there are so many moments I look forward to at the National Book Festival, like seeing giddy fans huddled together after seeing their favorite author, a child's eyes widen and brighten after listening to a story time, or families marching up and down the expo floor, going from one booth to another. I think you might agree that this is a time more than ever that our community of readers spotlight the vital value of books, that they allow diverse voices to be heard, broad topics to be learned, and dynamic engagement. You know how just a single book can change a life, how books can unlock life's wonders, and how they teach us to live and flourish. So tomorrow at the festival, we'll present nearly 100 writers, including bestowing the Library of Congress Prize for American Fiction to the brilliant James McBride. And this evening, we look forward to hearing from 6 of our renowned authors, and I think you can look around and see that assembled in this auditorium is an extraordinary gathering of talent. But before we begin, we have many to thank, and first and foremost, the U.S. Congress, the library's chief benefactor since it was established in 1800. No library in history has enjoyed such long-lasting and generous support. Without private sector support, the National Book Festival would not exist. Our most generous supporter is festival co-chair, Mr. David M. Rubenstein. I've often heard David speak of his belief that books and reading are keys to success in life. And as some of you may know, we share a history of the Enoch Pratt Free Library, which was David's library growing up in Baltimore, and which I had the honor to lead for more than 20 years. David has never forgotten the key role that libraries played in his life, and he has demonstrated this through his support of the Library of Congress and many, many literary and literacy efforts. So please join me in welcoming our festival co-chair and the chairman of the library's James Madison Council, David M. Rubenstein.
Thank you very much, Carla. And I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Carla's mother, who's here at 92 years old and going strong. Right? How many people here have never been to the Library of Congress before? Anybody? Okay, a few people. How many have never been to the Coolidge Auditorium before? How many have never been to the National Book Festival before? Okay. And how many people here are looking forward to tomorrow? Everybody? Okay. So you'll hear a little bit later about the history of the National Book Festival, and I won't tell you much about it, but it's an extraordinary experience for those who haven't seen it before. You've got roughly 150 to 200,000 people coming into the convention center looking to see their favorite authors, looking to hear from their favorite authors, looking to get books signed, looking to buy books, and for children particularly, the chance to meet with other children who care about books, to learn more about reading. It's really an incredible experience. And, you know, as I've tried to think about reading and how important it's been to me, it's not called the National Email Festival. It's not called the National Magazine Festival. It's a National Book Festival. And why is it books that are so important to read? Because books really focus the brain when you write these books. When you write a book, it takes a long time to write it, and it really shows you what the human brain can achieve. But also, when you read a book, it focuses your brain as well. And so everybody here, I assume, has had a great experience reading books, and that's what the National Book Festival is about, to get people to be more excited about reading, get more excited about the pleasure of learning. And that's what, you know, life is all about, is learning, improving. And so the National Book Festival, really conceived of about 24 years ago, has done a spectacular job of, I think, encouraging people to read more. And I just want to give a word about our Library of Congress. Some of you may know the library started in 1800, but it's only had, well, how many people here think that there were a lot of women who served as Library of Congress before? Okay. How many think there were a lot of African Americans who served as Library of Congress before? Okay. And there were only, I think, 2 other people who were librarians who served as Library of Congress before. So Carla Hayden is a triple threat. She is a librarian. She is also a woman, and African American, and from my hometown of Baltimore. So really, four great things about her. And she's done a spectacular job. The Library of Congress National Book Festival was conceived of, as you'll hear in a moment, a little bit more under Jim Billington. But I think Carla has really taken it to a much greater level than even Jim could imagine. So we're all proud to be part of it, and I want to thank you, Carla, for doing everything to make it possible. And so for some of you who may not realize this, you know, Carla Hayden, when she took the job, she was the head of the Enoch Pratt Library, my hometown library, and when she was given this job, and President Obama, who knew her from Chicago, where she had been before, told her she could be the Library of Congress, obviously have to be confirmed, but she was afraid of telling her mother because the job paid less than being the head of the Enoch Pratt Library. But, and so it's a great public service that she's doing, and I should tell you, it doesn't come with a car and driver when she wants to come back and forth from Baltimore. She lives in Baltimore and drives herself more or less back and forth from Baltimore, because there's no car and driver for the Library of Congress, right? So I hope you're not reading too much when you're going back and forth, but just you're listening to books, right? Right, okay. So I'd like to thank some of the other people who have been involved in making this possible. And we have a logo that will show up somewhere on the screen, I think. So our charter sponsors, I'd like to thank, are General Motors. Is there a logo for them? There it is, General Motors. Everybody go out and buy a car tonight to thank them. The Institute of Museum and Library Services, I want to thank them. The James Madison Council, that is the organization. How many here are members of the James Madison Council? Okay, well, thank you. This is named after James Madison, whose idea it was to have a Library of Congress. Now, he proposed the idea in 1783, and 17 years later, Congress finally got around to doing it. But we still admire him for having the idea. It took a while to get his colleagues in Congress to agree with it. So I'd like to thank the members of the James Madison Council. I'd like to thank our patrons and the AARP, and you're going to hear shortly a little bit more about the AARP. I want to thank them for their support. The CoStar Group, thank them. The John W. Kluge Center, and the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. So thank you all for your support. I'd like to also thank our champions, the Friends of the Library of Congress, and there's their logo, and our media partners led by NPR and C-SPAN. We have their logos, okay? And I guess C-SPAN will be televising some of the interviews tomorrow, and some of the authors will be doing interviews with them. And we also want to thank our exhibitors, our many hardworking library staff and volunteers. How many people here are volunteers tomorrow? Anybody? A lot of them? Oh, well, thank you very much for doing that. How many people work in the Library of Congress staff? Okay. How many of you are volunteering tomorrow? Okay, well, thank you. And among our most dedicated volunteers are the Junior League of Washington, who have supported the festival since 2003. They have a logo there, the Junior League. I want to thank them. And so I'd like to thank everybody who is a sponsor, because you know, one of the most popular words in the English language is free. And the Library of Congress National Book Festival is free, thanks to the support of all the people I've mentioned. So I'd like to thank them very much for doing it. Now, I'm going to be followed by, it said in my materials, the voice of God will introduce the next speaker. And only God could introduce this person appropriately. So let's have the voice of God.
Please welcome to the stage Doris Kearns Goodwin, the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian whose latest book is titled An Unfinished Love Story, a personal history of the 1960s.
Good evening, everyone. How joyful it is to be together at this National Book Festival. We're going to celebrate the power of books to stir the imagination, to foster empathy, to propel action, and to carry us lands away. And having been in love with libraries since I was a little girl, it is simply awesome to be in this building, the most magnificent building of libraries that I have ever seen. My love affair really Yay! My love affair with libraries really began when my mother took me to the small public library in my hometown of Rockville Centre, New York, a place that she told me would be a place that she could go to lands that she could never reach. Rheumatic fever as a child had left her with a severely damaged heart. Her illness bound her to our house as an invalid, but though she had only an 8th grade education, she read books in every spare moment she could find. In the middle of the night when she had trouble breathing, in the mornings after her household chores were done, in the afternoons as she waited for my father to come home from work. Through books, her interior world was enriched, even as her physical life continued to contract. And every night she would read to me as long as I could stay awake. The only joy that surpassed listening to her read a book to me was hearing stories about her childhood. I somehow became obsessed with the idea that if I could keep her talking about the days when she was young and healthy, her mind would control her body and her premature aging would be stopped in its tracks. Through her stories, I could imagine her a young girl once more, playing hopscotch, taking the stairs 2 at a time. So I'd constantly say to her, "Mom, tell me a story about you when you're my age," not realizing how peculiar that was until I had my own 3 sons who never once have said to me, "Mom, tell us a story about you when you were our age." When I was 14, my mother suffered a stroke. After much rehabilitation, she regained the use of her arm and leg, but her speech remained slurred. The doctor said it would help if she could read aloud. Finally, there was something I could do. I got David Copperfield from the library, one of the favorite books she had read to me as a child, and I suggested we read alternating paragraphs. She hesitated at first, embarrassed by her slurring, but gradually she looked forward to the routine as we settled down to read aloud for a few hours every day after school, drawing us closer together than ever before. The toll of her illness proved too much, however. The following year, she suffered a massive heart attack and died in her sleep. It is hard to realize that she was part of my life for less than a decade and a half, and yet the love of books and the love of libraries that she instilled in me has become the anchor of my life. In the years that followed, as I found my vocation as a presidential historian, I've spent countless hours running around the country to all sorts of libraries in a quest to bring to life the four presidents that I've studied most closely, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and LBJ. I've spent so many years with them, waking up with them in the morning, thinking about them when I go to bed at night, that I fondly refer to them as my guys. They're my pals, they're my guys. Now, it may seem an odd profession to spend one's days and nights with presidents who are no longer alive, but I wouldn't change these adventures into the past for anything in the world. My only fear is that in the afterlife, there's going to be a panel of all the presidents that I've studied, and everyone will tell me everything I missed about them, and the first person to speak up will be Lyndon Johnson. How come that damn book on the Roosevelts was twice as long as the book you wrote about me? But of all the adventures that I have taken with my presidents, none compare with the last great adventure I shared with my late husband, Dick Goodwin, when he finally decided to open the 300 boxes he had schlepped around with us for 40 years, boxes that proved to be a spectacular time capsule of the 1960s, a decade when Dick seemed to be a Zelig-like figure, present at defining moments with all the major characters, JFK, Jackie Kennedy, LBJ, Senator Eugene McCarthy, and Robert Kennedy. For 40 years, Dick had been wary of opening these boxes because the violence at the end of the decade had cast a dark curtain on the era. He wanted only to look ahead, not to go backward. But when he turned 80, he finally realized, he said, coming down the steps one day, that if I have any wisdom to dispense, I better start dispensing quickly. So we resolved to spend every weekend together going through the boxes in chronological order, reliving the 60s week by week, year by year, suspending knowledge of what was coming next, knowing only what the people at the time knew, something the historian Barbara Tuchman taught me when I was a young historian. And as we relived together the heady days of JFK's 1960 campaign, the inauguration, the birth of the Peace Corps, the Civil Rights Movement, and the March on Washington before JFK's assassination, and then the explosion of Great Society legislation under LBJ, civil rights, voting rights, fair housing, Medicare, Medicaid, aid to education, NPR, PBS, and much, much more before the escalation of the Vietnam War, Dick finally began to realize that the defining mark of the decade was not the violence and the assassinations, but rather the power of the citizens and having the conviction that they could make a difference. This was the belief that inspired tens of thousands to join the Peace Corps, to participate in sit-ins, freedom rides, marches against segregation and the denial of the vote, to launch the women's movement and the gay rights movement, movements that fired the conscience of the country and brought long-established systems of discrimination tumbling down. In the middle of our project, Dick was diagnosed with a cancer that would take his life a year later. One day, as he looked wistfully at the train of boxes that were still left, he asked, "Who would you bet on, me or the boxes? Who will be finished first?" But throughout that final year, the prospect of a book based on the boxes gave him a sense of purpose. It made him excited to wake up every day and work as long as he could. I realize now that we were both in the grip of a fantasy, maintaining the enchanting thought that so long as we were still working on the project, learning, laughing, and exploring the boxes, his life, my life, our lives together would continue. If a talisman is an object thought to have magical powers and to bring luck, our potential book was our talisman. And so it has remained. For even after Dick died, as I started once more the project we had begun together, I found myself talking with him every day, asking him questions even though he no longer answered. And here I am at 81 years old, having just completed a 3-month book tour in 30 cities where I talked about him for hours every single day. Oh, how happy that would have made him. And how happy it has made me, for it has kept him alive. That is the power of history. That is the power of books. And how inspired Dick would feel, as I do today, that there is something in the air right now, a renewed optimism reminiscent of the 1960s, the spirit that ignited the conscience of our country. For if the conscience of our people can be ignited once more, then a better future, a more compassionate future, a more just future for our troubled country will once more be within our grasp. I'm so glad I was having the chance to give these thoughts to you tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Sandra Cisneros is celebrating the 40th anniversary of The House on Mango Street this year, a novel that has become an American classic. Please welcome her to the stage.
I want to make sure I stay. In my 5 minutes, I brought my own little clock. Okay? And that was so lovely. Thank you so much, Doris. I want to begin by saying two names, José Eleuterio Cordero and Maria Romualdo Felipa Anguiano. And such an emotional trip for me to be here, a trajectory that goes back to these two individuals who were pushed out of Mexico during the Mexican Civil War. They were farm workers that worked land that wasn't theirs, and they had to leave because of the violence that was happening in Guanajuato, a state where I now live, 100 kilometers from the hamlet that they fled and never returned to. But every time I come into this library, I think of José Cordero and Felipe Anguiano, my ancestors, who could not read nor write. And if I had stayed in Mexico, if they had not braved that journey that took them across Texas, Arizona, Kansas, and eventually settling in Chicago, I would not be here today. So I want to begin by thanking them. I live in Mexico, and I know that girls from the countryside in the state of Guanajuato, when they get to be my age, this is their library. They embroider little cloths to wrap the tortillas in. That would be my library if they hadn't had the courage, as many immigrants during violent times, to arrive and to not learn how to read in any language until they were elders. So it's very emotional for me to be here. Libraries are sacred churches to me. They're places for worshiping thought and the imagination. And this morning, I met a hard-working Uber driver who delivered me safely to Logan Airport so I could get here. And we talked about the difficulty of our times, especially for immigrants today. But he was filled with hope, and his hope inspires me. His name is Bernardo Toribio, and he said, "Los buenos somos más. Los buenos somos más." The good outnumber the bad. I met Christina at the Wolfgang Puck pizza counter at Logan Airport, who treated me with kindness and care and convinced me that what Senor Bernardo preaches is true. Los buenos somos más. I want to thank libraries and librarians for being good. Their courage, especially now in this year of fear when so many books are being asked to be removed from libraries, including my own, House on Mango Street, because of citizens who are afraid to hear voices unlike their own. I was once an 11-year-old girl who never spoke in class. I never raised my hand. I am still that 11-year-old girl underneath the 69 years I am today. I wonder about other little girls who are not given permission to speak because they can't imagine anyone would want to hear from them, because they don't see their lives in a book, because they can't imagine their lives count. House on Mango Street is now in its 40th year of publication. This summer, I worked on the premiere of the opera adaptation with composer Derek Bramell. And what that book taught me is this: whatever we create with love, on behalf of those we love, con amor puro y puro amor, whatever we create with no personal agenda on behalf of those we love, siempre sale bonito. It will always turn out well. This is a law of the universe that I'm convinced of. So tonight, I want to thank people that allowed me to make that journey from my ancestors to be here today with so much emotion. It makes me feel like crying when I come in here. So I thank Dr. Carla Hayden. I thank David M. Rubenstein. I thank Clay Smith. I thank Elvira Cordero Cisneros, my mother, who loved libraries and taught her children to love them too by taking us to the library every Saturday, where she took out opera records, and that instilled in me a love of opera. And also my father, Alfredo Cisneros del Moral, an immigrant, an honest laborer, and a World War II vet. Dr. Norma Alarcón, my publisher and literary mentor back when no one knew who I was. The great Gwendolyn Brooks, the great Elena Poniatowska, my literary mentors, and my literary agents, Susan Burkles and Stuart Bernstein. I end again with Jose Eleuterio Cordero, Maria Romualdo, Felipa Anguiano, for the journey that has brought me here today. I believe human beings are capable of atrocities beyond imagination, but they are also equally capable of extraordinary God acts as well. I believe there is enough misery in the world, but also humanity, just a bit more, I believe. I believe in the power of a thought, a word to change the world. I believe in libraries. I believe in human beings. Los buenos somos más. The good outnumber the bad. Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the stage two-time Emmy Award-winning television host Tamron Hall, whose latest book is titled A Confident Cook, co-written with Lish Styling.
Yes, my pants are unreasonably long. That is the title of my next book. I use that bit of humor to stall, to be honest with you. I've done over 900 episodes of my talk show, and I am more nervous in this moment than I've ever been in my life. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for this opportunity. Dr. Hayden, thank you. Clay, thank you for that green suit today. And Dr. Hayden, thank you for sharing your mother with me. When I came in earlier, you said my mother in her 90s, and that is a lie you've told, wants to meet you. I immediately called my own mom and said, Mom, turn it on C-SPAN, I'm on TV. As if I'm not on TV every day. But having our parents celebrate our work and celebrate what we do and look at us and say, I'm proud. I saw your mother when we gave you the ovation. She clapped and you said, Mom, stop. I'm an investigator, I see everything. It brought me to this moment. My novel, Watch Where They Hide, is a character, Jordan Manning, inspired by my 30 years of being a journalist. And when I went into the publishers and said, I want to write this character, inspired also by the dusty Nancy Drew books under my bed as a kid, the box set that my 20-year-old single mom gave me to build my confidence and to develop my unreasonable curiosity that had all of the nuns at my Catholic school ready to have me exit the building like Elvis. It was an escape. So when I created Jordan Manning and I went to publishers and they said, listen, there is not a black female protagonist written by a black female journalist that's been published. I said, oh, she exists, but sometimes we're not let in the room. So Jordan gets to come in this room via me, and she is afforded this opportunity to inspire young women, young people, young journalists, that curiosity wins the day, that curiosity will take you to places you never imagined, which brings me to my current book, A Confident Cook. In 2008, the man who became my dad, the dad that God meant for me to have, left this planet. I knew that I would miss so many things about Master Sergeant Clarence Newton Sr., but his sweet potato pie, because it was the last thing that we talked about before he became ill. I just started out at MSNBC, Doris, and I was the low person, you might say, and I couldn't go home for the holidays. And my dad and I talked over his sweet potato pie. He said, do a dash of this and a little of that, and I'm trying, and for some reason, whatever I pulled out of the oven did not look like anything he'd ever created. When I went to Temple University, I told people I didn't know women could cook. All of my meals were prepared by my military dad. My dad would scurry often to my school to bring me lunch because I said, Dad, this doesn't look like what we eat at home. And he would rush in. He retired from the Army after nearly 30 years. So I knew I would miss his courage. I knew I would miss his fortitude. I knew I would miss his encouraging words that I could do anything and I could be anything in this world. But I never imagined walking into a kitchen and saying, Dad, where are you? I need you right now. I've never shared this story publicly. After we lost my dad, I came back to visit my mom in Burleson, Texas. And I walked in the kitchen and I prayed that if it was possible for us to see someone after they'd gone, that he would stand next to me in the kitchen. That didn't happen. I returned back to New York, where I was the host of the Today Show. And through the magic and amazing, curious journey that we are all able to live if we allow ourselves, I said, wait a minute, my dressing room is next to the kitchen at the Today Show. There's food, and there must be people there who can cook. So I walked into the kitchen at the Today Show, and I met this lovely woman. She had a radish tattooed on one arm and a carrot on another. And I said, Dad, are you kidding me? Because a person with a radish and a carrot mean business. These are root vegetables, you understand? Most people would put, a hot fudge sundae. That's what I'd pick. And so began this incredible journey that we detail in A Confident Cook. I met my friend Liz Styling from Wisconsin, and she met, not Tamron Hall from the Today Show, she met Tamron. And we quickly became like sisters. And we currently are the only cookbook with a Black woman and a white woman on the cover. The only cookbook with a woman who's LGBT and her ally to the very end. So while we have 79 amazing recipes that will make anyone fall in love with you, we have the incredible journeys. In fact, in our book, Lish grew up in Wisconsin. As I said, I grew up in Texas. I'm a tad bit older than her now that I'm approaching 54. We have the exact same haircut. And Lish, stand up. We have the exact same haircut now. So through Lish, I found my confidence in the kitchen. I found the ability to walk in and smell and discover flavors. And while this is a journey to become more confident, it is about finding joy. It's about expressing grief, but finding new friends, friends who are like family. Food is our common thread. We look at our history and we wonder and we discuss the divisiveness until you take a nice slice of someone's delicious pie. And suddenly you say, that was your grandmom's recipe? Tell me about her. Food is a common thread. My first trip to Mexico, the common thread of food and family, changed my life as a 12-year-old. Food is a universal language. And through our book, I'm so proud that we were able to meet one another and share this journey. My hands are shaking, but my heart is full. I am grateful for the journey of food, of confidence, of family, and I hope that as books build us, we recognize that sitting at the table and looking someone in the eye and saying a prayer, a thank you, grace, whatever it is, absorbing that moment. It brought a kid from Wisconsin and a kid from Texas together, underdogs. It can change and transform so many things. Books build us up. Food brings us together. Lastly, I will tell you, my grandfather was born in 1901. He could not read. He was a sharecropper in Luling, Texas. And now his granddaughter is here, making her living with words he could not read. And I am so grateful, and I love you all, and thank you.
Meg Medina is the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, whose new book is titled No More Senora Mimi. Jean Luen Yang is the former National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, whose latest book, written with Lei Wen Pham, is Lunar New Year Love Story. Please welcome them to the stage.
Well, hello, number 8.
Hello, number 5.
It's wonderful to see you.
It's always wonderful to see you. We're going to be fine.
We're going to be great.
We're going to be
gonna
great. We're going to be super. Okay. And we have notes here. So,
why don't we start by introducing ourselves?
okay.
So you are Meg Medina.
I am Meg Medina. I write picture book and middle grade and young adult fiction for kids, and I am currently serving as your National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. And you are who?
I am Jean Luen Yang. I'm a cartoonist, which means I write and draw comic books and graphic novels. I actually do that for a living. I've worked on books like American Born Chinese and Dragon Hoops and Superman Smashes the Klan. And I'm also the 5th National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. My term was from 2016 to 2017. Now, that was the fanciest job title I've ever had, National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Yeah. I'm sure not everybody in this room knows exactly what that job entails. So how would you explain it to them?
Okay, so there's 2 ways to think about it. The official way. The official definition is that it's this wonderful program that's supported by the Madison Council. Thank you very much for all of you who are here tonight. And the Library of Congress and Every Child a Reader. And it's meant to celebrate and enhance children's reading lives. So we tour the country and we support reading and kids' relationship to books. What I say it is that it's being a book friend to the kids in this country. So helping them connect with story, tell each other what they like to read, share with each other the things they find hard about reading. So that's how I saw it. But we all, define it differently.
That's right.
How did you?
We all have to find our way in. So I'm a comic book guy. I used to tell people when I was National Ambassador that my job was a little bit like Wonder Woman's. So Wonder Woman, not like the punching part, right? Not the punching villains part, because I'm not good at that. But Wonder Woman is the ambassador of the Amazon. So it's her job to fly around on an invisible jet, explaining Amazonian culture to people, to the rest of us. My job as National Ambassador was to fly around. My jet was not invisible, but I flew around on a jet, and I explained to people the culture of books. And the specific way we go about doing that is each of us as national ambassadors establishes a platform. This is something that we want to emphasize about book culture. So for me, my platform was called Reading Without Walls, and the way it worked was it took the form of a challenge. So if you wanted to meet this challenge, you would set a due date for yourself, and you could do this either as an individual reader or as a reading community. And by that due date, I just wanted you to read a book that fit one of three criteria. Number one, you could pick a book about somebody who didn't look like you or live like you, somebody who was very different from you. Or number two, you could pick a book about a topic that you didn't know anything about. Or number three, you could pick a book that's published in a format that you don't normally read for fun. So if normally you're like me and you read lots of comic books and graphic novels, I wanted you to pick a book with no pictures in it, a prose book or maybe a collection of poetry. If normally all you read are novels, I wanted you to pick something else. Pick a graphic novel or a picture book or maybe even an audiobook. And if you really wanted to go for the gold, you could pick one book that fit all three criteria. The point of it was to get kids to move outside of their comfort zones, to explore the world through books. And I was thrilled when libraries and school communities all embraced Reading Without Walls. Now you, as ambassador, have a platform that's going on right now.
I do, as we speak, Jean. It's called Cuéntame, and Cuéntame is really a bilingual platform. It's an invitation to kids who come from all kinds of backgrounds to re-engage with reading, especially after the pandemic and all of the learning loss and all of that. So the basis is, like yours, I studied yours actually. I studied all of the previous ambassadors, but I wanted kids to know how to talk to each other about books, and to talk about books in a way that was very different from how we do it at school. You remember this. You had your vocabulary test. You had your reading journal. You had your book report. You did those dioramas. You know you did. And I didn't want them to do that. I wanted in 1 minute for them to be able to tell me in a sort of infomercial about books what it is. Because I think, Jean, like when you tell me about a book that you love, you are telling me about that book, but you're also telling me about you. And in a few minutes, we have a relationship. And any parent, any teacher can tell you that nothing happens in that room without a basic relationship. So I did that. I did a video series called Let's Talk Books. You're going to be part of it. I hope you go on YouTube and check it out, because I'm talking with children's authors right now who are creating great, inclusive, diverse books for kids. And I did office hours, which was really fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they came. They came. These parents, I had one family, my favorite memory is a family, it was a mom, a dad, and 3 kids. The kids were Baxter, Bixby, the little boy was Twig because the father's name was Branch. So, I already told them I'm stealing those names for a book. But what I loved about them was that they talked about books together as a family. Talking about what they were reading, what they loved, what they didn't love, like that became the issue. So, I mean, I've had such a great time. Did you have a great time? I'm exhausted, but what do you
Yes,
think?
absolutely. It was both.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
super fun, but also exhausting.
Do you have a favorite memory?
I have a lot of memories. I loved hearing from young readers that Reading Without Walls pushed them to pick up books that they normally wouldn't have picked up, and some of them even found new favorites that they were not expecting.
Nice.
I loved hearing from librarians that Reading Without Walls helped them to circulate books that did not get the attention they deserved within their communities. And one of the coolest things that we ended up being able to do during my term was we partnered with Panda Express. So you know how like McDonald's and Burger King have these kids meals? Panda Express also has a kids meal, but up until that point, they had never done a giveaway with their kids meal. So we teamed up with them to do the very first Panda Express kids meal giveaway. And it wasn't a plastic toy, it was actually a comic book that told a story that you could read.
Oh, I love that.
It was really fun. It was amazing that they said yes. And in the back, there were activities that would encourage students or readers, young readers, to do their own writing and their own drawing. So they donated a stack of these to me, and I brought them with me to these classroom visits, and I got to read the story with the kids. I got to do the activities in the back with them. I got to watch them write and draw about themselves as superheroes, and they came up with some really amazing costume designs. I have to tell you, this new generation is really into video games and chickens. They really love both. They really love both.
Chicken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now my term ended a while ago. My term ended 7 years ago, and your term, Meg, is ending pretty soon.
I
This
know, December 12th.
That's right.
I keep telling Anya that they're going to find me in like the closet in the library. Like, you're going to have to pull me. But I've had a great time.
Yeah.
The library is a magical place, and I've tried really hard to honor its beauty and all the vast treasure that it is, and also to make it accessible to kids who don't see themselves feeling comfortable in a fancy place like this. But the truth is that this library and every library in this country belongs to all of them. So that's really what I feel like I'm leaving with. I don't know. I'm thinking that there's a new ambassador that will come in January, and what I hope mostly is, first of all, that they know how hard they're going to work. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, they're going to work hard, but I want them to think about this job not as their accomplishment, but as this chance to be a shepherd, to really be a caretaker, and use books to be part of how we care for the children in this country, because they deserve it.
That's great.
And that's it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much to the Library of Congress and to all of you for supporting the culture of books. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Please welcome to the stage actor and children's writer Max Greenfield, whose new picture book is titled Good Night Thoughts.
Hello. I just want to say how humbled I am to be here, to be with these authors, listening to your stories, why you're here. I was trying to take it all in. And if I could just say one thing to you, Tamron, if there is one thing that I have learned in this life, it is that right now, in this moment, your pants are the exact length that they are supposed to be. I was trying to look up a word that would describe, or best describe, my presence on this stage this evening, and I generously found the word implausible. I watched this event last year on the computer, and David, you so beautifully, you love to ask questions in the beginning when you're speaking to the audience, and last year David looked at the audience and he said, who here has read 5 books in the year? And most everybody raised their hand. And then he said, well, who here has read 10 books in the year? At which point I said, oh no, he's counting up. David, Dr. Hayden, Clay, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for inviting me here this weekend. Clearly you did no research. Don't panic. Look, it's not that I don't love books. I do. I love them. I love them more than anything. They inspire me. I have such, the process of reading them, I have found to be very challenging. More specifically, these types of challenges were ones that I had wished that had been identified and defined much earlier in my life, but that's a different story, one that I'm working out on my own, and it's not what tonight is about. I do love books, though. I love books because they can tell any story. They can be about anything. They can tell anyone's story. They can be about anything, even not always wanting to read them. My first 3 picture books, appropriately titled, I Don't Want to Read This Book Is Not a Present, and I Don't Want to Read This Book Aloud, all center around the fears attached to reading, the fears of learning differently, the fears of reading a book aloud. You know, these are the books that I wish that I had when I was a kid. And look, if you take them at face value, you might react to them the same way one gentleman did when I was doing a reading, and afterwards he said to me, seems like your books are about not wanting to read. To which I said, maybe you should read it again. Clearly, this man did not get the joke. But to be fair, he looked like the kind of guy that doesn't get any jokes. But that's not what tonight's about. What he failed to recognize, though, is that a picture book is not just meant to be read. A good picture book, in my opinion, is meant to be a bridge to a conversation. Thank you. Honest, think about who just reacted to what I just said. This is my audience, and who understands me. Speaking of those conversations, my son is 9. That's not him. This is how most of our conversations go. How was your day? I don't know. I'll start that over. This is how most of our conversations go. How was your day? I don't know. What do you mean you know? Well, what did you do? Good. Are you now answering the first question, I would say? How can we expect a child to articulate their fears around learning and around reading when that same child can't recall the events of the day that just happened? And furthermore, how can we expect them to open up to us and talk about the anxieties that they may have that exist beyond reading, the thoughts that keep them up at night? This is the conversation we are trying to initiate with Good Night Thoughts, my new book that is so beautifully illustrated by James Serafino. The inspiration for this book was from my dear friend, Leslie Jordan, who many of you may remember. Thank you. Leslie was on this stage not too long ago at this festival with his own book. And he was a dear friend, and the two of us would often talk about our fears. And we would list them. And Leslie's lists were always far more entertaining than mine. He would say, bumblebees, electrical tape, straight man. Maybe this book just got banned in Florida. I sure hope so. You know, Leslie would love that. But we would openly discuss our fears, only to realize that very few of them were things that we were faced with in that moment. You know, Leslie didn't count me as a straight man, which I always took as a compliment. But here is an excerpt from the book. But then I close my eyes again. I remember that my brain can be noisy, and my thoughts are sometimes jumpy. And then I remember that all that noise and all those thoughts are just in my head. I'm not being eaten by a robot shark. My toilet isn't overflowing with tarantulas. And thank goodness there isn't a dentist in sight. As far as I can tell, the world hasn't popped into a piece of popcorn. My best friend is still here, and I'm not falling from a cloud. Right now, everything is okay. And so am I. Good night, thoughts. Good night. What are the fears that our children carry around with them? What are the thoughts that keep them up at night? It's the books that we as parents, as educators, as librarians, read to them that initiate these essential conversations. I am so grateful to be here this weekend to celebrate the possibility of those conversations, to celebrate the incredible work of so many authors, and to celebrate all of it with all of you. Thank you so much for having me.
I think you can agree that tonight we felt the power of words. Thank you to our featured authors. You are what the National Book Festival is all about. And you in the audience will be able to see more of them tomorrow. And I want to bring up someone right now. Joining the Libraries Madison Council as co-sponsor this evening's opening celebration, as many of you know, is AARP. And we are delighted to have AARP's CEO, Ms. Joanne Jenkins, with us tonight to share her memories of the book festival, because Joanne joined the library family, the Library of Congress family, in 1993 and served in a number of senior roles, culminating with her tenure as the Chief Operating Officer. And among her many, many accomplishments at the Library of Congress, Joanne worked tirelessly to advance reading through the National Book Festival. I want to show, and I hope it's showing, a photo that we found of Joanne and her husband, Frank, who's here with us tonight, and former First Lady Laura Bush. Because together, Mrs. Bush and Joanne helped launch the National Book Festival and made it into this annual literary tradition. She led the first 11 festivals, each one growing in size, reputation, and visibility. And now at AARP, she's led their commitment to supporting this festival, and we are sincerely grateful. So I'm pleased to welcome to the stage my and the library's good friend, Joanne Jenkins.
So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction, Carla. I didn't realize you were going to show a photo. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. But what a wonderful celebration and kickoff of the 24th National Book Festival. When Carla and Sue let me know that they wanted me to say a few words, I pulled out all of my old photos from the first National Book Festival. And when George W. Bush won the election in 2000 and then became the president in 2001, we thought, someone at the White House can read. This is going to be great for us, you know? And we affectionately called the First Lady the Reader-in-Chief. And we cooked up this story for Dr. Billington to call over to ask, could we do something together? And she actually came over and we met in the ceremonial office upstairs. And Dr. Billington asked her, what would you like to do? And she said, I'd like to replicate the National Book Festival like the one we do in the state of Texas. And I remember asking her, what does success look like? And she said, if we could get maybe 5,000 people, that would be great. And so the first festival was held on the side of this building, all around the building and in the building, with the goal of having 5,000 people. So on that first year, we had 15,000 people, and the fire department shut us down a number of times during the day. Yeah. The second year, I had the task of convincing the architect of the Capitol to let us have the book festival on the west lawn of the Capitol. And we had to promise we were not going to destroy the grass and that we were going to make sure that everything was just like we did that. And so we went over. Little did we know the sniper was going to be in Washington at the time, but we held the National Book Festival there. We tore up the lawn, and then they decided to allow us to have the book festival in that third year on the National Mall. And so for many years, we were able to have the festival there with so many different people coming. One of the things that surprised all of us so much was we never envisioned that people were going to come with suitcases full of books to get their authors to sign their books. So hence we started selling the books so that the library could get a percentage of the profit and they wouldn't be bringing suitcases full of books to the National Book Festival. But what a wonderful to see the growth that has taken place, and you know, all of us at AARP are just so proud to be partners. That's a result of Sue Siegel fundraising from AARP and for AARP to be one of the donors of not just this year but for many, many years. And we are so grateful and always so pleased that so many people find joy in reading books. I too myself, even though I have it on my iPad, I also like to have the hard copy so that I can hold in my hand. And I just want to say a special thanks to all of the staff here at the Library of Congress. They are an incredible group of people who work tirelessly every day. And then lastly, just to give my thanks to the James Madison Council and David Rubenstein, who have sought fit to come up with the additional funding that it takes to put this on. I know last year they had over 150. I'm not going to get into who had the biggest book festival, but I will say that well over 150 to 200,000 people over the course of the day sharing their love for books and hearing from their favorite author. And if tonight was an example of what we're going to hear tomorrow, what a wonderful day we're going to have. So thank you on behalf of all of my colleagues at AARP, and I'll say all my colleagues from the Library of Congress for all that you do to make the National Book Festival such a wonderful celebration. Thank you.
Thank you all the way up here, because we are so excited and so grateful that you could all join us this evening for this opening celebration. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the Washington, D.C. Convention Center to enjoy acclaimed authors and readers of all ages and many reading-related activities, all of which are free. So now, would you please join us upstairs for a reception, and those of you watching online and on C-SPAN, we'll see you tomorrow.